We're going to be talking about the IP route command, how we can manually enter routes into the routing table, the configuration of those static routes, verifying connectivity, default routing, which a lot of times is used for connection to a service provider, and then troubleshooting our static or default routes. I'm going to bring up a diagram of the network I've loaded into the simulator. So we've got three routers, router A, B, and C, and we've got a machine on each subnet. So basically this machine's IP address that's on the 99.8.0.0 subnet is 99.8.0.2. The Ethernet interface on each router is the subnet address with the .1 for the IP. So it's 99.24.0.1, 99.16.0.1, and 99.8.0.1. So the routing tables, we're going to go in and take a look at the routing tables right now. I've configured the IP addresses of .1s and .2s on the appropriate interfaces and turned the interfaces on. So we're going to look at the default routing table, what shows up in the routing table by default, and then we're going to look at building that routing table so all of the machines can ping each other. Let me open up my simulator. So again, in the NetMap viewer, I can see the simulator here. I've got Palestra 1, Palestra 2, Palestra 3, and one PC coming off of each one of those routers. So let's take a look at this router right here, Palestra 1, and let's look at what's in that routing table. So if I go to router Palestra 1 and I do a show IP route, I can see that I have two directly connected routes in the routing table. C stands for directly connected. Now, I see that I have 99.32.0.0 is connected to the serial 0 interface and 99.8.0.0 connected to Ethernet 0. There's nothing else in my routing table. So right now, if the machine that's on the 99.8.0.0 subnet tries to ping the machine that's on the 16 subnet, this router would not know how to get it there. So I have to tell it how to get it there. And to do that, I can use the IP route command and say, hey, if you want to get to this subnet, you need to go out of this interface or send it to this next hop router. Let's take a look at the running configuration. I can see here that serial 0 has an IP of 99.32.0.1 and Ethernet 0 has an IP of 99.8.0.0. What's wrong with that picture? That is not a valid IP address. If it were on a non-simulated router, it would not allow you to put that IP address in there. Whoops, 9 plus 9. That's much better. The IP address here is 99.8.0.1. Now this machine should be able to ping the next top router of 99.32.0.2, and it can, and it should be able to ping the machine on the Ethernet off the Ethernet interface of 99.8.0.2. I cannot ping that machine, so I'm going to go in and verify connectivity real quick. Then I will populate that routing table. I went to the Palestra 1 machine and I pinged both of the router's interfaces. So I'm going to have to take the computer's word for it that it has connectivity because the router's acting a little funny. Again, this is a simulator, so not everything's going to be perfect. So what we want to do is we want to populate the routing tables in a way that the computer 99.8.0.2 machine can ping the 99.16.0.2 machine and the 99.24.0.2 machine. Since the routing tables are not populated, there is no connectivity between computers, so we have to go in and populate these routing tables. Again, if I do a show IP route, I see that my router knows if it's two directly connected routes, or do two directly connected subnets, but it does not know of the distance subnets. Again, if we look at the network map, we've got the .16 subnet over here that PC2 is in, and the .24 subnet over here that PC3 is in, as well as the .40 subnet that Palestra 1 does not know about that the two router interfaces are in. And I want to put that one in there as well, so when I am testing for connectivity, I can see how far my pings reach. So let's go in and configure Palestra 1 with 1, 2, 3 additional subnets into its routing table. And I do that with the IP route command. I type IP route, and what I'm specifying now is the destination subnet. If we do a question mark, it says, hey, what is the destination prefix or destination subnet address? And it wants it in this format, dotted decimal. So I'm going to say, okay, there's another subnet out there, 99.16.0.0, and then it's going to ask me for the mask that goes along with that prefix. And the mask is 255.248.0.0. That's the subnet mask we're using. Now this part right here, it wants to know one of two things. If I put a question mark there, it says, hey, what interface does it need to go out of? This is static route here. This is for ISDN dialer. What interface does it need to go out of, meaning serial interface do I need to go out of to get there? Or what is the next hop router's address? So I can either type in serial 0, or I could type in the next hop IP address of 99.32.0.2. The only difference between the two is what's called an administrative distance. If I put serial here, the router would look at that that destination as a directly connected subnet or directly connected route. If I put in the next hop IP address, it gives it a cost of 1 as a static route. So it'd be a cost of 1 versus a cost of 0. Most of the time it won't make a difference. I just want you to know that the router does assign a difference. So I'm going to use the next hop router's IP address, which is 99.32.0.2. If I look at the network map, I'm on router Palestra 1. I'm saying, hey, to get to the 16 subnet over here, you need to send it to this IP address, which is the router that's directly connected to the 16 subnet. I hit enter, and I have a new static route in there. I have to put a couple more in there, and I can just bring up my previous command, and I'm going to say, hey, to get to the 40 subnet, you're going to be sending it to the same next hop router. I have to specify a next hop IP address. I can't specify a router that is not directly connected. So he's going to be putting it to the same next hop router for each one of these. And the last subnet that we're going to connect to is .24. And even though .24 is off of this router, I'm still sending everything to Palestra 2. It's up to Palestra 2 to get it on from that point. So if Palestra 2's routing table is not populated, it's not going to help me any. So at this point, I have put in the 3 routes, show IP route, and I can see that my routing table is completely populated. 3 static routes. Here's my administrative distance of 1. That's the administrative distance. And then 0 here, no cost to these associated to these routes. So I have all 5 routes in the routing table here. Router 2, however, only has 3 routes in the routing table. So what that means is ping 99.16.0.2 from the router should work. And why that works is because when I ping from here, I'm sending it with a source IP address of 99.32.0.1, and I send it out. Hits the machine. The machine sends back to 99.32.0.1, And as the destination 9932.0.1, Palestra 2 looks in its routing table for the 9932 subnet. And it says, oh, I know where 9932 subnet is. So I'll send it out of my serial 0 interface. However, when I try to ping 9916.02 from PC1, I should not get a reply back. And the reason I don't get a reply back is because PC1 is on the .8 subnet. So it makes it all the way over here. PC2 sends to .8, hits this router. When the router looks for .8 in its routing table, let's take a look at Palestra 2's routing table. There is no .8 in there. So it can't send the ping response back or the echo reply back. But if I put that one route in there, IP route 99.8.0.0, next top router of 99.32.0.1, show IP route. I just told Palestra 2 how to get to the .8 subnet. Palestra 1 router knows where all the subnets are. So now, from PC1, I should be able to ping 9916.02. We'll just see if the simulator agrees with me. And it does. So since I just put that one route in there now, that router Palestra 2 knows where .8 is, it's able to get the response back. So I'm going to go in and populate all of the routing tables. So let's go to Palestra 2, check out its routing table, show IP route. I just put in there's 4 routes in there. The only one it doesn't know where is located is the 99.24 subnet. So in global mode again, I go IP route 99.24.0.0, 248.0.0, and the next hop router for this one is 99.40.0.2. So if I do a show IP route, I can see that the routing table is populated. It's missing one. Show IP route. It's missing that route I just put in there. There it goes. Again, simulator, not always going to be perfect, but it does the job. So we've got 99.24.0.0, cost of 1, because it's a static route, and it goes to this next top router of 99.40.0.2. So again, looking at my net map, it says, hey, to get to the 24 subnet, which is where PC3 is, send it to the next top router, Palestra 3. And the IP address is 99.40.0.2 right there. So let's go to Palestra 3 and populate that routing table. If I do show IP route here, well, I already did one, and I can see that there's only 2 routes in there, so I have to tell it where all the other routes are. And again, looking at that, Palestra 3 is going to send everything to the same next top router, Palestra 2. The center router here is the only one that has different potential next top paths. One router is Palestra 3 to get to the 24 subnet. Palestra 1 will get it to the 8 subnet. However, for this router on the far side, everything needs to go to Palestra 2 because that's its only next hop router. So the next hop will be the same on all the IP route commands. So IP route 99.16.0.0, 99.40.0.1. And all, since I can leave that the same, the subnet mask is the same with all of these. All I have to do is just edit that part of the command so it makes it real easy to fill in all the other destination routes. 8 and show IP route. Everything's working. So as long as I put the right next hop router IPs, I should be able to ping from eStation 3 to anywhere in the network. 99.24.0.2. So I can ping PC2 and I can ping PC1. So now that all the routing tables are populated, I can ping from here to anywhere in the network. Let's take a look at what's called default routing. In this situation here, Palestra 2 is the only router that's got more than one gateway, meaning more than one next hop router to go to. Palestra 1 and Palestra 3 send all of their destination traffic to Palestra 2. So what I can do is, instead of telling these routers where all these other subnets are, I mean there might be hundreds, or you might be connected to a service provider, I can say, hey, I don't care where the traffic is going. If Palestra 1, if you get a packet from PC1 that wants to go somewhere, send it to Palestra 2. So I say all traffic that you get, send it over to Palestra 2. So anything PC1 sends out, I just tell the router, I don't care what it is, just send it on to this guy. And that's called a default route. So it's easy for me to go in and set that up. It's a lot easier to set a default route than it is to go in and tell the router all these destination subnets. And that's typically what you would do when you're connecting to a service provider. So the first thing I have to do on Palestra 1 is I'm going to get rid of these IP route commands here and replace it with just a default route. I can get rid of these commands by simply using the no command. I go no IP route 99.16.0.0 and just by typing a no in there, I can go in and get rid of each one of those default routes or static routes. 40. So I'm able to go in and get rid of those. I'm just going to go ahead and do a show IP route and make sure that they're gone. So by typing in that show IP route command and hitting enter, I can see in here that it only knows if it's directly connected paths anymore. If I do a show run, those static routes that I put in earlier that I've gotten rid of are gone. So now what I want to do is go in and configure a default route. I use the same IP route command, but for the destination, I just put a bunch of zeros. So here it is, just a bunch of zeros on there, and I'm saying I don't care where this destination traffic's going, and that's what all these zeros means. It means any destination, send it to 99.32.0.2. I hit enter, show IP route. Notice in here, it's showing up 99.32.0.0, 99.8.0.0. Nothing else is showing up, and what should be showing up is a gateway of last resort, and that's my default route that I've put in there. It's called a gateway of last resort. What it is, it's any traffic going anywhere can go to this next hop route. Not showing up in the simulator very well, but this is where it's going to show up. It's a gateway of last resort. Gateways of last resort can also be used for, let's say, a router does have multiple paths, but you don't want it to drop packets that it doesn't know where the destination is. So you can set a gateway of last resort. So hey, that's a last chance or last ditch effort. If you don't know where the destination is, try this next hop path. I just typed in show IP route again and hit enter, and my gateway of last resort is working now. So I guess there's just a little bit of a lag time with the simulator. Static route. All zeros, meaning anywhere. Cost of 1. Via next hop router 99.32.0.2, and check it out. It says gateway of last resort is to network wherever. So wherever it's going, whatever destination, you're going to be sending it to 99.32.0.2. So what this is look for this entry in the routing table, which is here, and you'll be sending it to that next hop router. So that's a default route. So now I can still ping. Let me go back to my PC01, I can ping 99.24.02 because of that gateway of last resort being set. It just took a second for the router to process that information. We'll go to the last router so you can see this one more time, Palestra 3, and we will get rid of those static routes again. Control A brings me to the beginning of the line, and I hit no, get rid of that. So I'm going to get rid of all the static routes again so we won't have connectivity. .32 gone. If I do a show IP route, routing table should be empty. Let me try that one more time. Again, this thing's a little bit slow as far as picking up what I'm doing. So now, again, nothing's there. Only thing that's showing up in the routing table, 9940 and 9924. Gateway of last resort is not set, so if it gets anything destined for the 16 or the 8 or the 32 subnet, it's going to drop it. So we need to tell it how to get there. Again, let's look at eStation 3. When we try to ping 99.802, can't get there because the router doesn't know where to forward it. So we're going to give it a gateway of last resort. IP route, next top router, 99.40.0.1, enter, show IP route. I might need to wait a second again. It's showing up right away this time. Awesome. So we've got static route, destination network, meaning anywhere, 99.40.0.1. And we can see, hey, gateway of last resort is, when you don't know where to go, send it the same path that network 0 takes. So network 0 goes to 99.40.0.1. That means any traffic. If we go back to station 3, we should be able to ping 99.802 because we put the default route in there. Again, the default route would not work for Palestra 2 because it has two different next top paths, but for Palestra 1 and Palestra 3, it works fine. We have talked about routing with static routes, using the IP route command and configuring the routers with these static routes, verifying connectivity with the use of ping, default routing. Again, when we've got only one way out, here's a router, there's a subnet, some computers, there's only one way out, might be going to a service provider or just another next top router. Whatever the case, we can use a default route and say all traffic, just send it out of this interface. And also some troubleshooting, verifying that all the routing tables are populating, what happens when only some of the routing tables are populated, and problems you might run into.